Welcome into Basketball by Association. It's a cute name. Glad to have you aboard the podcast. My name is Arky. That is Joel. Hello, cute name Joel.
Well, all right. I guess I'll take it.
Yeah.
I'll take a compliment.
Nothing wrong with the compliment on the day after the 4th of July. Let's start the second half of the year good.
Speaking of cute names, that's a perfect segue because this is episode 66. And surprisingly, once we got into the 60s here, there's not a lot of players to choose from. Sometimes there's only one, maybe two guys who even wore that number, if anyone at all. But 5 players in NBA history have worn number 66, including 3 during the modern era. We've got, this number is so old that the original 2 guys who wore it, one played in 1947 for the Detroit Falcons, and the other played in 1949 for the Indianapolis Jets.
I'm pretty sure you just made that up.
So we're digging quite back for the original 2, and then after that, it was almost 70 years before somebody wore number 66 again. But we have a semi-current player in the NBA who has worn number 66. No, it's not Andrew Bogut, who wore it with the Lakers in 2018. Remember, Bogut played like all of one game for the Lakers before he got hurt and was done. But not only is this a player sort of currently from this season, but he even sort of currently played for one of the 2 teams in the NBA Finals. And he's got, I guess, what would qualify as a cute name. This is the Axel Toupane episode, or Axel Toupane. I've heard it both ways. Wore number 66, had a couple of 10-day contracts with the Milwaukee Bucks this season, appeared in 8 games for them. And you got to love an Axel Toupane episode.
Joel, even with all those qualifiers, and you mentioned his name, I still don't think you mentioned his name. It feels like I still am not quite sure who the hell that guy is. So
it's from France.
Sure.
And 6'7", 197-pound swingman. He has appeared with the Nuggets in 21 games. In fact, he was originally drafted by the Nuggets in 2015. Then played a little bit with Milwaukee, in fact, in 2016. And with New Orleans, just a couple of cups of coffee with each of those. And then back with Milwaukee this year. So he has been kind of more of an overseas and G League guy. But he did play 8 whopping games for the Eastern Conference champs this year. So, he gets the nod by default. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I feel like congratulations to him. He got an episode named after him just because this podcast is still going. No other reason.
That's fair, and he appeared in 33 NBA games over the course of 4 partial seasons.
Yeah, if this podcast stopped in March, well, he doesn't get an episode named after him.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you know what we're gonna do. I thought about this too. Once we hit episode 100, do we just start over and 101 means a player with the number 1 is eligible? Do we drop this whole shtick altogether, which I kind of don't really want to do?
Oh, first of all, we would go with the player who was number 101. I don't know why we would stop with the numbers.
Well, unless we're nominating Air Bud or somebody like that, I don't think we're going to have any choices.
We should then go with famous fictional basketball players.
That's intriguing, actually. That's intriguing. We could have the Jesus Shuttlesworth episode. I would down with that.
Okay, all right. That guy might get 2 episodes named after him at some point.
Yeah.
Joel, just like we predicted the entire preseason, just like we predicted right before the playoffs began in our preview episode, it's the Bucks and the Suns for the NBA championship. So I guess that's the end of the episode. We knew exactly what was going to go on and exactly how it would go down this way.
Man, I wish we had, because you being a semi-professional gambling man, we could have made a lot of money. Oh, we could have made a lot of money.
Yeah, because the Suns weren't really expected to get past the Lakers to start off the series. And now check this out, seeing as I am a semi-professional gambling man, the Suns are the favorite -200 to win the world championship over the Milwaukee Bucks. So we're going to get into the ins and outs of this series.
Let me ask you just a quick gambling related question, just out of curiosity. Do you think that line would be flip-flopped if Giannis were healthy coming into this series? That feels like a Giannis-sized asterisk to all of this, doesn't it?
Oh, it's a huge Giannis-sized asterisk. And in fact, it might be a Giannis plus bringing in a little Shaquille O'Neal from, his Boston Celtics days, not the Orlando Magic days asterisk. What was it? The big Shamrock. It's huge because Giannis tends to be important as a two-time MVP who has had a really great playoffs statistically, will sort of tell you. But Joel, I guess let's get right into it. The Milwaukee Bucks, without Giannis the last couple of games, the Milwaukee Bucks, without playing the kind of basketball we thought that they should be playing this entire postseason, are your Eastern Conference champions. And Joe, we have sort of punched them below the nether regions as far as how they've gotten here.
Well, below the nether regions means we're like, what, punching them in the thigh, the knee? I mean, we don't have to get too anatomically correct, but...
Oh, no, we're going Tanya Harding on them. That's what we're doing.
All right.
We're taking it. We tried. You specifically took
just
out
as long as I know where to aim. That's all I need.
You went toward the kneecaps when we talked about how much this team did not impress you by the way they were getting there.
Yeah, they didn't deserve it in the Brooklyn series, at least.
Wow. Okay, it's over, Joel. They're here. Okay, relax. Joel, this Milwaukee Bucks team with Mike Budenholzer apparently knowing his team the way he knows his team. He's an Eastern Conference champion coach. That's an Eastern Conference champion team. And they're 4 wins away from being world champions without knowing the status really right now of Giannis. And we won't know until right before the game tomorrow night.
So a couple of things happened when Giannis went down. And you and I talked about it as soon as it happened, as soon as he was, ruled out for an indefinite period of games. We said, yeah, this could sink the Bucks. They certainly were shell-shocked when the injury happened, and the Hawks showed killer instinct and kind of ran him out of the gym in game 5 or game 4, I should say. And we said, the Bucks may come back, and this lack of killer instinct that they had, it may come back to bite them. It may finally come forward, and the Hawks will be just healthy enough to take advantage. Or the other caveat we said is this has been such a weird year. So many weird things have happened, including thinking about like what happened with the Clippers as soon as Kawhi went down and we all wrote them off, that maybe it becomes that circle the wagons type of moment and the Bucks suddenly win their next 2 games. And that's exactly what they did. Not only did Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton play so much better in games 5 and 6, better than they had arguably that entire series, which was necessary. But then Brook Lopez all of a sudden reminded us that, hey, wait, he can play more than 3 inches above the ground. And like he can finish plays inside. He doesn't have to just be a 3-point shooting center who blocks a couple of shots on the other end. Like he showed us the flashes of Brooklyn Nets, Brook Lopez, who really was a dominant force in the paint. And he gave them enough of that lift. Bobby Portis was huge, especially in game 5, although he had some really nice defensive plays in game 6. And then Jeff Teague comes out of nowhere, out of the scrap heap in game 6 to give them a lift. So different guys. Pat Connaughton had really big minutes for them too. PJ Tucker played phenomenal defense, especially in game 6, I thought. Drew Holiday, Reggie Miller said it a couple of times during that game 6 broadcast. It's like Drew Holiday is guarding everyone on the Hawks at once. He was just everywhere. And so all of those things needed to happen. I think on the defensive end, it made them refocus to the fact that they are at their best when they're playing gritty, smash mouth basketball on both ends and not just playing talented, Giannis-centric basketball for as good as he is. And once they took that as their identity, the defensive end improved a whole lot more. And I think on the offensive end, and it's almost heretical to say this, but the ball was moving better without Giannis out there, at least for these 2 games, because we didn't have the hesitation Giannis would get the ball, he'd hold it for a second, then he'd take a couple of dribbles, then he might make a move, but it's a half-hearted move half the time unless he was in exactly the right position. And the ball on the offense was not only stalling, but it just didn't have rhythm. It's like everybody was kind of on eggshells waiting for what would happen next. And with Giannis out of the picture, the ball started popping a lot more. It was moving with purpose. There was cutters again. There was a little more predictability to all of it. You saw Drew Holiday getting into the lane a lot more instead of just being a standstill guy, which is where he's at his best. And that opened up Brook Lopez for lobs. So I'm not saying the Bucks are better without Giannis, but I think the Bucks were better equipped to finish those games without a Giannis who really had lost confidence in not only his shooting ability, but especially his free throw ability. I mean, we saw him absolutely going Nick Anderson on us, and I hate to kick Nick, but like, I mean,
he was rattled. He was rattled.
It was absolutely rattled in that fourth game, and it had already been happening through the previous games too. So Milwaukee got to some intensity there, and you wonder if maybe having a few games off like this for Giannis allows him to reset mentally and maybe not be in whatever state he was in before and to come back fresh. And now these other guys have some boosted confidence too, that they got back into a rhythm, and suddenly they look deeper when it's like, okay, we know we can rely on Bobby Portis in the next series. He didn't play much against Brooklyn, but he was nice for them all regular season. He did good things against Miami. He was huge in this series. Pat Connaughton found his stroke again, and maybe Jeff Teague can give them a few minutes, especially if Bryn Forbes, Forbes hasn't been hot since the Miami series when he was absolutely smoking. So there's still the law of averages that says Forbes is about due for a couple of big games here as well.
Yeah, I found Game 5 and Game 6 so sort of fascinating to sort of watch because I think Milwaukee was like a heavy favorite in Game 5, and I thought that made like a 3-point favorite. I'm sorry, in Game 5, and I thought that made sense because I thought they were a better team, like overall still, but they had not really played like it. So I didn't really play that game because like it doesn't, there's no Trey and there's no Giannis in that game. So I think Milwaukee should win this game. It should win it fairly comfortably, but they haven't really shown that this series, that they can win a game like that comfortably when they should, or the last series for that matter too, that they haven't really sort of been up to what we know that roster is up to doing.
Absolutely.
And Game 5 and 6 were just odd because that's the kind of style and offense that like we should be seeing with Giannis in the game, and I wonder.
It's what we were begging for them to do against Brooklyn, right? Play to your advantage, which is in the paint. More.
I was wondering, like, some of this has to be Giannis in his own head, right? Like this can't be just the talent defensively that in the game plan defensively that Atlanta was putting out there. Like it just seemed to me that Giannis felt like he needed to be the guy that carried that team in the Brooklyn series, a lot of times in this series too. And that's why you see a lot of, what they call hero ball all the time. You saw a lot of him carrying the ball almost the entire way up the court, him sort of isoing up at the top, and him just sort of not moving the ball around to get like a good shot and a good play. And so
what's really frustrating about that is we were in some ways calling for him to do that, right? Because there was that passivity, but then it went from one extreme almost to the next, where you lose your rhythm. And still, even when he was being assertive, it took so long and was not within the flow, which is what you were getting at.
Yeah, long possessions,
that they were slightly better off than before, but not really. And, part of this is we were calling for Giannis to take the lead because, let's be real, Middleton and Holiday were so awful many times offensively during the Brooklyn series and even a little bit early on in the Atlanta series that it was going to be Giannis or bust, right?
And that's what you sort of felt like you didn't really know what what team was going to show up for Game 5 and 6 with Milwaukee, right? And that's why I was scared to put money on it. I'll be honest with you, like I just was not going to put money on a team that I knew should win by a lot, but especially when Trae Young's not there. When the last time I was looking at a team without Giannis, sort of without Giannis, like the slowing down, plotting pace of Giannis, those two guys were terrible, and like they needed good games, and they got them, and they got them, and that's sort of the rhythm of the team that I hope to expect in the finals, with or without Giannis in the lineup. But I'm not sure what it's going to be when Giannis does come back. So it's going to be really intriguing to sort of pay attention to that side. I want to get to Phoenix, but I just want to give a nice goodbye to the Atlanta Hawks. A sporty run in the playoffs, to say the very least. In fact, it broke today that Nate McMillan is already got his terms lined up to be the permanent head coach for the Atlanta Hawks.
Deserved, right? Well deserved.
That seems to make some sense, right? Right. You come in as an interim, like 20 games in the season, and then you go to the Eastern Conference Finals. Feels like you earned a little bit of something.
Yeah, and I hope he gets a nice big paycheck out of it too. It sounds like it'll be a long-term deal, which is the right move. Sometimes it's just the right guy at the right time, and Nate McMillan came in. He had to have had a chip on his shoulder a little bit after the way things ended in Indiana, right? Because I mean, he got them to the playoffs repeatedly, and yeah, it didn't turn out the way it was supposed to.
No, they're getting swept out like every year. Like
but injuries played a big part in that too, and he gets to Atlanta, and they're kind of floundering in the water, and he was able to connect with them. I mean, they all talked about that, and what's really, I think, impressive about that is Lloyd Pierce was well liked by the Hawks players. He didn't get the results that management wanted, but Pierce connected well with the players there too overall. And so there was very much the possibility, when you've got one well-liked coach being replaced by an assistant who literally just got there, that, the guys are kind of side-eyeing him a little bit and aren't real happy because he replaced their guy. And instead, McMillan was able to connect, and they kind of embraced each other where they were at. And suddenly the Hawks go on this tear, which did coincide with better health. We got to be real about that. But they certainly had players that were in and out of the lineup a lot too, especially their young guys. And they just completely turned that season around. And all of a sudden now you look at Atlanta and go, yeah, they're a real threat. You got to put them in the same conversation as Brooklyn, as Philly, as Milwaukee. They may not have the bona fide veteran cred that those other teams have, and they're certainly the newcomer. But based on all the talent that's there and the upside to continue getting better, it's always a temptation or a pitfall for young teams that kind of overachieve one year that maybe they fall back down to earth the next. So that's going to be a consideration for Atlanta. But there's so much room for them to be even better than they are too, and that's what's really scary.
Yeah, and I don't think that they necessarily overachieved that much. Like, we thought they would be a playoff team, right? Like,
but we didn't think they'd be a conference finalist, right? I mean,
no, but we sort of saw, like, we didn't also expect Lloyd Pierce to be fired, a month into the season, right? Like, there were some things that some variables that sort of changed, and we saw a lot of young talent really play. And you know what's impressive about that too, since Nate McMillan got there and since the All-Star break especially, like, they did it so much with defense. Like, there was so much, and that kind of thing travels. Like, you're seeing two good if Atlanta admitted, you would have seen two really good defensive teams make it to the finals, and that kind of stuff you can play with. Like, you can get through a season, and you may lose a few games by just getting outshot by the Wizards or something. But, like, if you get into these playoff series and you have a good coach and you have good players and you play defense, like, you can make things happen. And in the East, it's not impossible. Listen, they had to play the Knicks to start off with. The Knicks were coming off like a poor man's MVP and Julius Randle.
Yeah, and they were playing good ball.
And the Knicks were playing pretty good ball, but they also had a point guard that couldn't play, for crying out loud. A 55-year-old in Derrick Rose, who was coming in having to play a lot for them.
Let's go back and we'll eat crow. We both picked the Knicks to beat the Hawks,
yes,
and we're pretty adamant about it, right? pretty adamant that was going to be the case.
I would be. That's more on you because I'm a fan, so I was going to pick them to, But I thought the matchup worked out nicely for the Knicks, and it worked out very, very poorly for them. Mm-hmm. So the Hawks have a lot to be optimistic about. But boy, they're definitely going to look at this and be like, if Trey hadn't got hurt, man, if there's no bone bruise, man, what could we have had right now? What could the Hawks have had right now? Because they were equalizing in Game 4 on a broken Bucks team who was broken before that, just scheme-wise. And they were going on, and they looked like they had all the momentum in the series in the world.
They did. I got a question for you going forward. John Collins is a free agent. That's been a big storyline throughout the season for them, especially early on when it was kind of rumored that maybe him and Trey weren't getting along very well, and that seems to have been buried. Collins played a big role for them. Still very questionable whether he's like a max level type of guy, even though that's certainly what he's going to hope to get paid for. And some team out there will probably pay him that. But you could also make the case that, like, for as good as Collins was, he was maybe their like third, fourth most important player throughout the playoffs. Do you break out the Brinks truck for John Collins if you're the Hawks, knowing that like you got something here and there's that continuity factor, but there's that flip side of you hamstring yourself on a big contract for a guy who may not be a superstar, is probably just a star guy who maybe can get to a couple of all-star games in his career, and that's probably his ceiling.
I was starting to look up the Hawks cap space sort of situation and how much room they would even have to play with to sort of put a dude near max money like that. And they're about middle of the pack. They're not in great shape, but really there's only a couple teams like the Knicks and the Spurs or something that are in really great shape. I think the Mavs are too. I'm actually looking at, hold on. Yes. So there's like 4 or 5 teams that have I think including the Hornets, there are 8 teams in the league that have at least that have positive projected practical cap space coming forward. So I don't know, man, because Trey's going to need a lot of money coming up. I mean, not this offseason, but it's like you are keeping Trey Young in Atlanta when it comes due time for him. You can't make any bones about it.
And your shooters, you look at your wings. Herter is going to get a lot of offers on the market once he hits that because of the stretchability. DeAndre Hunter, when he was healthy at the first half of the season, absolutely looked like a keeper. I know he's only a rookie, but you still got to project these things out. Cam Reddish looks like an absolute keeper. If I'm the Hawks, I look at as valuable as Clint Capella was, he got played off the floor numerous times. And even though I don't know whether John Collins truly can be a center in today's NBA, I think I roll the dice on that and I see if I can find a taker for Capella. If I need to order up more cap space, and maybe you don't need to do it this year. Maybe you sign John Collins this year and you worry about Capella next year. Because Onyeka Okongwu looks like he can play, and like him and John Collins can play together too. Hunter's big enough that maybe you start using him as a small ball 4 against certain lineups, although the league is sneakily trending back bigger again. It's trending back where you've got a little bit more of these traditional like centers and power forwards on the floor for longer than you think, because they've begun to adapt their games and aren't getting killed in the pick and roll quite so much.
So I just looked at Trey's numbers for example, after this season, he is now eligible for the rookie extension, 25% cap max, which starting in 2022 would be a 5-year, $168 million.
Which he'll probably turn down, right? So he won't take the extension. He'll wait till he can get the full
right,
deal.
Which will be quick look after the 2020. Oh, let's see. That's the qualifying offer. The club option was exercised for 2021. Yeah, so he's a restricted free agent after next 21-20. Yeah, after next season. So I think that's right. After his I mean, it's tough to turn down like that kind of money. Just be like, no, I'm gonna get a lot more. So but the answer with Collins, I don't think you go with Collins. I don't think it's going to work out financially for you.
So you let him walk in free agency and then maybe try Hunter at small ball 4? Is that where you go with it?
God, it's hard to want to break up a team like this when you're still so young and so sort of gelling in the right direction. I'd be tempted. You could always get him back, right? Like if you sort of let him walk, you could always sort of end up being the team that has the best offer. I mean, I don't know what. See, I would let him test it. I would let him test the waters because I don't know what the. I should be a better GM about this, shouldn't I? I don't know what.
Well, because I look at somebody like Dallas. You know, Dallas needs a finisher above the rim, and they may look at that and go, he can play the Dwight Powell role plus a whole bunch more, you know, and you could conceivably play him next to Porzingis if Porzingis is even in their long-term plans, which is kind of a question mark at this point. So I don't think Collins fits everywhere, but I think he fits in enough spots, including some of the teams that have got cap space where they may try to build on that. I mean, maybe San Antonio looks at Collins and they've got some young guys up front that we know they're interested in, that they kind of cleared the deck by getting rid of Aldridge for. But, you know, I think you're right. Collins is going to get some offers. You don't want to disrespect him and then have him just leave you by default, but maybe you're okay with that eventuality. If it were me, I would probably pay him and then work to get rid of Capella to balance that out, whether this offseason or next, or I look at my sign and trade offers. So I'm not getting, you know, nothing back if I am losing Collins.
And we can talk about that's more the off season. Yep. Let's go to the Phoenix Suns if you don't mind. That's a team that's got its S together, so to speak. Chris Paul, despite being shoved in the back late to the ground by Patrick Beverley, which, by the way, super cool move, bro. Down 20 in Chris Paul. I don't even know.
What was also especially great about all of that is that Paul, at least in the videotape, didn't say anything as he passes by Beverly.
Like, unless he sort of like is a ventriloquist of sorts.
Right.
Like, I don't know what could have possibly. Like, he may have given him a look, right? Like,
that's it. That's it. He gave him a look. He gave him a side eye.
Like, okay. Do you need to? And by the way, the NBA comes out with their statement. Patrick Beverley will be suspended for the first game of next season. Thank you very much.
Yeah. All right. Now, I fully 100% trust, knowing the long track record of Chris Paul. He's got a dirty player reputation. He's got a trash talker reputation.
Sure, he punches guys in the nuts.
We fully know that Chris Paul was saying stuff before this.
Yeah, he's an agitator. He's a world-class agitator.
Whatever it was, apparently stuck long enough that a simple side eye is the exclamation point with a little heart dot at the bottom for whatever he had said before to prompt Patrick Beverley, who also is a dirty player by reputation, to turn around and just completely cheap shot him. Like, come on, Pat, if you're going to do this, at least have Paul facing you, right? You know, give him a hockey shove if you want to do it. Give him the old joke, or no, it wasn't the old Nazi Muhammad to LeBron James hockey shove. I wish I was at that game, by the way. I saw that from the press box as it happened. I was covering that playoff game for Bleacher Report, but neither here nor there. But at least, you know, don't do it in the back. That's so ridiculous.
It is. But you know what I enjoy about what's going to happen with this NBA Finals is that it's going to turn into this kind of, especially if they're able to win, it's going to be the Chris Paul coronation, right? And it's going to be all these stories about Chris Paul has been so close before and injuries have cost him this. And it's true. But Chris Paul is going to be made to seem like this really lovable kind of guy. And he's really kind of a prick on the court. Like, so.
Yeah, what's weird is it's a dichotomy, because he has been, and he's also been a prickly teammate. Like when he was with the Clippers, he was not well loved in their locker room, and it eventually wore on everybody. Right, kind of like being coached by a Van Gundy, right?
Right, you saw where DeMarcus Cousins was mouthed like, and you want to wonder why nobody would want to mess with your butt.
Right.
You know, DeMarcus Cousins was like, nobody likes you, man. It's like, well,
But at the same time, then
he's going to be Disney-fied is what he's going to be.
He was spoken of, very highly in OKC, kind of the later turn here. He's getting to write a little more of the narrative. It's, rest in peace, Kobe, but that's kind of what Kobe did over the last couple seasons of his career as well. There was
people forget about Kobe.
There was a goodwill tour going on where a lot of the teammate narrative got rewritten from what actually happened earlier in his career. But yeah, I mean, Paul deserves it. Paul is kind of an Isaiah Thomas type of character for our generation, where you absolutely respect the heart, the hustle, the talent. You absolutely know that he's a jerk a lot of times, unless, he's in the right situation with the right teammates, and then they swear by the guy. So, I mean, that's going to happen. We're going to get we're going to get all sorts of Giannis puff pieces, as if we didn't know the story, like backstory of him coming to the U.S. already and all that stuff. We're going to relive all that again, too.
By the way, Joe, I don't know if you know, but with the name like Antetokounmpo, he is not from Milwaukee. It's actually like he's not a homegrown talent. He's from somewhere else.
I want to say this. It was especially going to be true with the Hawks, but the more I think about it, it's absolutely true with the Bucks too. It's just that the Bucks have been good the last couple of years, and a finals berth was at least possible for them. But this is like the first random on both sides NBA finals since the 1970s, where you have two rando NBA teams that usually are not there in the finals at the same time. Like it happens occasionally that a random unexpected team, a newcomer, pops into the finals.
Like the Nets or something.
Yeah, like the Nets got in, or like the Raptors a couple years ago, or even when the Warriors finally got back, they hadn't been to the finals in forever. That happens, but it's usually against an established power that's already been there, or we just get the two established powers of that day going against each other. And back in the 70s, you had like the Bullets showing up, and the Bucks were there, and the Sonics got one, and the Suns were there once, and the Blazers, and there was just kind of this swirling milieu of teams that would show up, go once, and then you wouldn't hear from them again. And it was really going to be true if it was the Hawks. I mean, for crying out loud, like Suns, Hawks, ridiculous. But when you think about it, like the Bucks haven't been there since 74, and they haven't even sniffed the finals really since that time. Like, I think they've got one Eastern Conference Finals appearance back during like the Glenn Robinson, Sam Cassell era, Ray Allen era, but they didn't show very well during that, if I recall. Like, it wasn't even close, and we knew they weren't really going. But they've at least been on our mind the last couple of years. It doesn't feel as random because they've been up and coming. But the Suns, didn't even make the playoffs last year, much less the last 10 years. It's crazy.
Yeah, and I hope someone will bring back up that they were undefeated in the bubble and still weren't able to make the playoffs run.
I'll take that as positive karma, right? They missed out last year, and they got a little extra rest. Because a lot of those bubble teams got beat up once they were into the playoffs. They got a little extra rest, and here they are.
Well, you mentioned, listen, we'll get to, I guess we can sort of mention in a second, but I'll bring it back up. Like, another couple of huge injuries are making stories in this playoff since we've last spoken, being Giannis, who has no structural damage, but who knows what his game time decision will be for one or two, because I
think he sits game one, and they test the waters to see how they do, because that group was playing so well. They rest him for one more and then throw him in it.
And I think he's traveling to Phoenix. So I think he's traveled with the team for games 1 and 2. And Trae Young obviously not able to sort of be the dude that we sort of got used to, the shoulder roll guy right before the making the three, the telling everybody to be quiet in New York, and but back to Phoenix. Chris Paul has been a very steady force for this team and a big leader. Devin Booker has burst onto the scene for a lot of people. Dude who was already averaging like 28 a game for the last couple seasons. His numbers, I think, went down just a little bit, but hey, you got Chris Paul on the team, and you're still, really darn good. That's okay if you ask me. DeAndre Ayton's had a great postseason run so far. He's had a great run, and then when he hasn't played well in a game, he's come back with a great game right afterwards. So he's been able to bounce back in the more traditional center role. Joel, the Phoenix Suns are everything we didn't think the Phoenix Suns sort of would be. Like we thought this would be a team that could come back to the pack. They never did. We thought this was a team that was not able to sort of, because new teams together don't usually break through and go all the way through to the NBA Finals, but they did. We didn't think they would be able to get past the Lakers because, again, it's hard to win that final closing game. They won the first chance they had to close out the Lakers. Like, this Phoenix Suns team has done everything we sort of didn't think they were going to be able to do, and now they are also 4 games away from being world champs.
And when you look at their matchup versus the Bucks, Phoenix brings a lot of what Atlanta did really well and really challenged Milwaukee with. Phoenix brings that to the table, and maybe even a little bit more so. A swarming defense, a very athletic defense that'll play the passing lanes, that if you are not prepared to hustle the entire game, they will outrun you. They can finish because of both Booker in transition and Chris Paul as a trigger man. They've got guys in Ayton and Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, who can play above the rim. They've got some savvy veteran guys in Jay Crowder and Dario Saric. Torrey Craig has given them some defensive minutes as well. They're really, really deep, just like Atlanta was. They've got guys like Craig, like E'Twaun Moore, like Frank Kaminsky, Abdel Nader, Langston Galloway, Javon Carter. I mean, basically everybody on their active roster, except for rookie Jalen Smith, have played meaningful regular season minutes for stretches that help this team get there. And you got to think, just like Nate McMillan kind of had his team's ear, Monty Williams has had his son's team. I mean, they've been in the wheelhouse all season long here. And you know that if he's got to go deep into that bench, that those guys are going to be ready to play. So they got a lot of different options. Their backdoor cutting has been something that I've really, harped on a lot and highlighted throughout these playoffs as a strength. They killed the Lakers with that. You've seen that in every single round. Like when you try to tee off on Paul or Devin Booker, which you almost have to do because they just get to where they want at will, then all of a sudden you got Ayton and Bridges playing above the rim, coming from the weak side to finish lobs. You got Jay Crowder sitting in the corner or as a backdoor cutter who's pretty savvy with his timing. He's not going to dunk a whole lot on you, but he'll get some layups. Like, they just play basketball the right way. And that's exactly what I thought made Atlanta so dangerous. Mm-hmm. And we saw that when Milwaukee was not mentally prepared to play bully ball, to be absolutely on point and jumping passing lanes and energetic at all times, the Hawks, like clockwork, took advantage of that. And that's where I think Phoenix's chance to win is. On the flip side, Phoenix does not have the length to throw at Giannis that Atlanta did. Atlanta had John Collins and Clint Capella and Onyeka Okongwu and, Gallinari if they absolutely had to, plus some of their rangy wings. Phoenix has got the rangy wings in spades. They got plenty of that. But they don't really have a power forward type of guy that you comfortably match up with Giannis. Do you want DeAndre Ayton guarding him and daring him to shoot threes? Ayton, of course, talent-wise and body type-wise is a fine choice for that, but then you risk getting Ayton in foul trouble and missing out on all the other good things that he does. But if you're going to put Jay Crowder on him, totally undersized against Giannis. You put on Bridges, totally undersized as well. And you don't have a lot of other choices because Cam Johnson and Torrey Craig are all kind of in that small forward shooting guard type of body type as well. So that, I think, could be the Achilles heel in the Bucks. Again, hopefully they're looking at the roster and the scouting report and this light bulb is going off because we thought it was going to go off against the Nets too. And they played right into the Nets' advantages. So if the Bucks don't pound the paint here, if they don't not only go to Lopez, but when Giannis is there, force feed him and he's not confident, or, I mean, let's face it, the Suns could start throwing in Frank Kaminsky and Nader and some of these other guys and just play hack a Giannis and keep putting him at the free throw line for a little while. Like, if the Bucks can't overcome that, all of a sudden the Suns' ability to run becomes really, really dangerous.
Well, you thanks for stealing my thunder. I was going to mention a couple of things. One of those being that Phoenix has got to be licking their chops for Giannis to be out as long as possible because of that. Because DeAndre Ayton is just a physical matchup, fine, but Giannis is going to, if he's close to full health or even playing, he's going to attack the rim from beyond the 3-point line anyway. So like if you give him any space, he can do both and will do both. For frankly, like no matter how he is hot or cold that night. And then at that point, if by the way, if here's what I'm saying for Phoenix game 1, if Giannis is out, I'm taking Phoenix. I think Phoenix is going to be able to take advantage of that matchup, and I think they'll run all day on Milwaukee. But if Giannis is in for any of these games, my strategy would be early on to see on the biggest stage the NBA has, on the road, if he's in these first 2 games, take a couple whacks at him. Keep him from getting into a rhythm early, and if you are able to rattle him from the free throw line and be sort of in his head a little bit early, you might be able to stay there and keep him more off his game longer if he's never really able to get into the game that way. That's if, by the way, you're hacking him a couple of times and he's going 1 of 4 for the first couple of times out there, or even getting a chance to shoot the free throw. I mean, I can't believe that guy knows he's being timed and still doesn't get free throws off. Like it's wild to me that he's got this his routine that prevents him from getting off free throws, within a 25-minute span.
That's poor planning. I mean, that's got to be fixed this offseason. You can't keep doing that.
I don't know who pointed out in the last series, but like the fans are chanting the time with, like they're counting with him. Whoever pointed out, super genius, because the fans now know, and now not only is it his head or the player's head around him, it's in the fans' brains where they can get into his head, and like. You don't like most of these guys have never been in this high of a situation this deep into the season. So I'm going to challenge Giannis as much as I can early, being a little hurt, knowing he's had, it seems like a little bit of fragility of the mind when it comes to definitely free throw situation, to sort of get into a rhythm and not, slow his rhythm as much as possible and to make it as herky-jerky as possible. When a guy is sort of, you're playing like make it take with somebody, and like they just keep shooting from one spot and they keep making it from one spot. So what do you eventually do? You roll the ball to him, you knock him off a spot, a couple spots, like by throwing it around, because you want to get him off his spot. Mm-hmm. If you can get Giannis off of his spot and out of rhythm mentally, I think you got a real good shot at running through Milwaukee long term.
And you mentioned with Milwaukee, him trying to attack the basket from the 3-point line. I'm okay with that if it's in quick strike, transition type of opportunities. What I don't want is Giannis out there at the 3-point line, getting it, hesitating, letting the Suns defense get set, and then driving in, because his length is neutralized by the fact that Bridges and Crowder are both strong and both have quick hands, and will stand him up and slow him down to where the help from Ayton then begins to come over and the wall gets formed. Or you've got Chris Paul, poking at the ball as he goes through, and suddenly Giannis's length gets neutralized by that amount of time it took. So if you can do that real quick when there's no help under the rim, or there's no way the defense gets loaded up, fine. Otherwise, I don't want to see Giannis as the guy out there trying to attack from that far out. To me, you post Giannis up in the mid-post, and you let him back that guy down before the double team comes. It's got to be a quick move, and you allow him to use that spin that he has and the little finger roll finish right at the rim, or sometimes if he gets deep enough position, he can just dunk right over the shorter player. Like, to me, that's where you get Giannis going. But everybody else, while he's in the post, there's got to be movement. There's got to be cutters. It can't just be dribble, hold, and eventually we run out of time and chuck the ball to PJ Tucker, who, takes a field goal from the corner and airballs it, which is happening way too often, even in the games that they've won.
Yeah, I'm with you also in the fact that I think he's probably going to miss game one. And I think if he misses game one, Phoenix wins that game. I don't think Milwaukee has any chance to beat Phoenix in Phoenix without Giannis. But that also means that will force him to play game two. He will force himself to play game two because as much as it's like, you win two at home, you lose two on the road, you win two at home, and you go back and forth. I don't think that's the case with this Phoenix team. They're not playing like that. Phoenix is winning everywhere they go. They got the style of ball that goes everywhere they go, and they don't have to rely on the 3-point shooting. Devin Booker doesn't have to go for 6 threes in the first quarter for this team to win games.
But I will say this, like, as good as Phoenix has been, what we've seen from Milwaukee over the last couple games, what we saw from them during the Miami series, what we saw from them during plenty of stretches of the regular season, and even in game 7 against Brooklyn, that travels very well too. That's really good elite basketball. And they've played it now without Giannis a couple of times. The biggest question for them, of course, is can you show up and consistently do it right off the bat? Because if the answer is yes, I don't actually think Phoenix is the favorite. For everything that we've talked about with Phoenix, I think Holiday's ability to play defense and Middleton's ability to knock down shots and play better than advertised defense, and then Lopez and Bobby Portis, and PJ Tucker, all of those guys just hitting the glass so hard. Pat Connaughton has been an offensive rebounding machine. Their ability to just pound the ball on the inside and, yes, make a ton of threes when they're hot, but to keep possessions alive and to keep coming at you, which then, of course, does not allow the other team, like Phoenix, to get out and run back the other direction. That should not be underestimated. Milwaukee is championship caliber if their heads are on straight.
Well, yes. And I think if Giannis is close to healthy, this is a pretty even series. I'm judging all of this as if Giannis doesn't play game one, then I think Phoenix eats. I think they eat, and I think they win. They probably win pretty comfortably, I think, in game one, and then it'll be up to Milwaukee to sort of be able to respond with Giannis, because, again, we've seen the last 2 games what we've been able to see from Middleton and Holiday. What am I supposed to expect when Giannis comes back eventually? Are we going to go back to what we saw in game 4 before he got hurt when they were getting smoked by Atlanta? Or what I've seen a bunch of times when they went up against Brooklyn. If I'm picking both teams both healthy, I think Milwaukee is your Larry O'Brien Trophy winner. I think Milwaukee's the better team. I don't know if I'd say better coach, because Mike Budenholzer frustrates the crap out of me. But I do think that they're the more talented team, that they're the more athletic team. I think they're the longer team. I think they're the team that's sort of built here to do this now. They're the more experienced team. They've sort of been knocking on the door for the last few seasons to sort of get here. And I sort of believe, like I was thinking with Philadelphia, that they're sort of due, right, if they're healthy. But without Giannis, it puts a lot of question marks in the air. And that's why I think,
for sure,
without Giannis, it's much like you were talking about with the Clippers and without Kawhi. No Kawhi, no Clippers to the NBA Finals. That's just it. Sorry. I mean, you're a fine team, and congratulations for getting to the Western Conference Finals, but Kawhi's a pretty big piece of the puzzle to lose this late into the season against a really good Phoenix team. Let me ask you this. So I want to get out of here sort of talking about what we think is going to happen in this 7-game series, hopefully, coming up starting on Tuesday night. The futures odds have who do you think is the favorite to be the MVP, according to, I'm going to use DraftKings. The betting favorite to be the MVP of this series.
Chris Paul.
Betting favorite at plus 175. Devin Booker is at plus 240. If you want to look for the highest Bucks player, it's Giannis Antetokounmpo plus 350. I want to ask you who you think will be the MVP. Then I want to ask you who you think you would sprinkle a little money on for the high-end odds, okay? So remember the first question is who you think will be MVP. But let's do some of these other odds. Chris Middleton's 550, which is pretty good. Pretty good numbers. Drew Holiday's plus 900. DeAndre Ayton's plus 2,500. Mikal Bridges plus 1,000. Lopez plus 10,000. My fault. Cam Johnson 15,000. Cam Payne 15,000. Pat Connaughton 25,000 plus money. Bobby Portis plus 25,000. So is PJ Tucker. So, who do you think will be the MVP of the series, and who would you sprinkle a little bit on as like a long shot, but still pretty good money?
I'll take Devin Booker as my likely MVP.
Okay, that's going to get a good return on your investment, plus 240.
And I am absolutely torn on who I think actually is winning this series.
Okay.
Like, honestly, I think it's 50-50 for me in my mind between Milwaukee and Phoenix. But if I had to go with the longer shot guy, I don't think you can go too far deep down the bench. I don't think we're going to see an Andre Iguodala type of scenario here where somebody's just out of complete left field. So I would go Chris Middleton. If the Bucks can win, Giannis will be Giannis, but somebody else is going to have a phenomenal series. And Drew Holiday, I mean, his defense has been so good. He's shown offensive flashes, but he's also been off a cliff at times offensively. Whereas Chris Middleton, I mean, he puts a couple of 40-point games in the books during these finals, and all of a sudden he's very much in that conversation.
Yeah, so if I was sort of to sort of handicap this, I first have to think who I think will win the series, because that's usually where the MVP comes from.
Yeah.
And I don't think any of these players is going to have such an outstanding finals that it would supersede their team losing the finals. I mean, Chris Paul is the betting favorite. It's kind of lame to say it, but like I feel like the storyline is going to be there for him, that his numbers don't necessarily have to be there completely. Like he's going to be a guy that people are going to know that 10 points, 13 assists is a really good game for him, and you don't
have to... He's going to get brownie points for intangible plays that other guys don't get.
And he's probably going to have one game where it goes for like 25, 28 or something like that. So that's going to help those numbers look good. So Chris Paul, will go the betting favorite as far as who I think will win. But if I'm spending a little sprinkle money, DeAndre Ayton at plus 2,500. I don't think it's impossible, especially if you see a lack of Giannis in this series. I don't think it's impossible to see a guy like that sort of step up and become a X Factor. Stupid, because he's not an X Factor. He's a really good player, and he's one of the top 3 players. He would be a guy that I would sort of circle as it's Devin Booker or it's DeAndre Ayton, who I think is going to take over this series for Phoenix if I think they're going to win it. And so I would put a little sprinkle money on DeAndre Ayton.
Is it safe to say that you're picking the Suns as your champion then, because you've gone all 3 Suns? You know, you talked Paul, you talked Booker and Ayton as your potential guys for MVP, and knowing what you said, that the MVP usually comes from the winning side. Is Phoenix your pick?
They are my pick, and it's very simple for me. Phoenix is a known commodity. Phoenix I have seen be consistently good when they've been consistent. I know what their foibles are, and they're not very many. I know what their sort of peak is, which is still pretty good. Milwaukee, Giannis injury is huge for me. And I feel like even with Giannis, I don't know from game to game which Milwaukee team I'm going to get. And Monty Williams has done a phenomenal job of doing some defensive scheming this entire season and this postseason. And I'm going to go with who I trust, and that's going to be Phoenix to win this. And I think they win it in 6.
All right. Like I said, I honestly am 50-50 in all of this. But I can't do that and not pick somebody. So partially to be contrarian, and partially because as often as we've bet against them and railed against Milwaukee, they keep finding ways to get it done.
Right.
And like I've said, when their heads are on straight, they are absolutely elite. Yep. And Giannis is a question to which the Suns don't have an answer if it's the actual real live Giannis Antetokounmpo showing up and not the Nick Anderson version of Giannis. So I'm going to go with the Bucks. It's one of many picks during these playoffs that I have not felt good about. Like from the emotional side of me, I've said it for the last 2 years. I want the Bucks to win a championship.
Oh, me
because
too.
I don't want Giannis ever to leave Milwaukee. I want him to stay there. I hate when superstars jump to the Lakers or Miami or whatever. I understand there's certain situations where that makes sense, or Brooklyn now, but like a guy that came in literally out of nowhere, that the Bucks discovered, that's the type of guy that you want to see rewarded with a championship for staying in that place and what it means to that franchise and that city. So I want to see that happen. At the same time, like, Phoenix has just been so darn lovable in that they've played the game the right way all year. You can absolutely play the nobody believed in them card, even when they were the second seed in the West.
Right.
Nobody believed in them.
Right.
They haven't been in the playoffs in 10 years. They've never won a finals for that city. And you think of how many really good Suns teams there have been throughout NBA history that never even got this chance to knock on the door. And the couple of times that they did, they lost in the finals. So, I mean, emotionally, like, I'm going to be happy whoever wins this series. It's not like a lot of years where, you know, it's been easy for me to go, yeah, I want the Mavericks to win and screw the Heat, you know, or something like that. But I'm picking the Bucks. I don't feel good about it.
And I completely understand why you don't feel good about it, because I think the answer the Suns have for the the Suns have, because it's hot there. The Suns have for Giannis Antetokounmpo is air conditioning. No, it's a scheme. It's not a single player.
Would we call it a sunscreen? Is that stretching it too much?
I think we should end the podcast right there. I don't even think we should say goodbye. I think. And I'm with you. I'm rooting for it. I think it's going to be a really tight series. I think it's going to be really good. I think Giannis comes back. I'm hopeful he'll play all 7. I don't want this finals also to be marred by another injury. I'd love to be able to see him come in
for sure
and play. I mean, what they got Tuesday, Thursday games in Phoenix, and then he'll have a long weekend to get back home to Milwaukee. But everyone wants to sort of downgrade whatever champion is going to be coming out of this because of those injuries. I just hope somehow we can keep the NBA final itself as injury-free as possible, especially from superstars, so we can see the best of what we got left, because we have a handful of superb basketball players that people are going to be able to watch for arguably the first time this entire season when we get to the casual audience. So, Joel, I think that's going to do it for us. We both have the Suns winning in 2. Is that what we just said? No, canceling your pick because you said sunscreen. I'm kidding.
Fair enough.
I like it. I like puns like that. So, Joel, I'm going to let you say goodbye to the good people.
So the Axel Toupon episode is in the books for whatever that's worth. I don't know. But
it's been an hour since I heard that name.
But of course, if you're listening to us wherever you find your podcast, because that's where you get this here podcast, and you want the video version, please come on over, check out the YouTube channel. You can search Basketball by Association or BbA. Give us a like, a share, subscribe, all that good stuff. We thank everybody who has supported the show this far. It is so much fun to talk hoops with you, and we're going to be back on Wednesday to do it again. We'll have game 1 in the books at that time.
We'll have Chris Paul going for 60 points after game 1. Let's do that real quick. Who's MVP of game 1?
I'm gonna ride the Booker train. I think Booker's due for a big series here.
I'm going DeAndre Ayton. Ayton for game 1. Again, this is all presumptuous of Giannis not playing game 1, because if he plays game 1, DeAndre may score 20 and then give up 50. So it could happen. It might happen. Joel, who knows? Get to the YouTube, everybody. Go watch this now. Rewatch the show if you missed it. Bye, Joel.